All right, we're back, and it's a little late, but I'd still like to try and push out these videos whenever possible. I'm a little bit behind schedule, but that was due to just real life things happening, being a little bit busy, as well as my internet dying. So, yeah, that happened. But today, I think I'd like to discuss the idea of backlogs, but I'm not here to just talk about the typical backlog dilemma or how to fix it and whatnot, because honestly, in my opinion, there's no fixing it. So I'm just going to share my own take on the backlog, and well, I believe that it's a little bit of a unique perspective to the backlog. I don't know if people have experienced what I've gone through, but I think it can be a refreshing perspective to view things from, because like everyone else, I have a very distinct backlog, well, not backlog, but gaming history. So my genres are almost very polarizing, so I think we'll just get into it. So first off, I started playing games when I was a little kid. I started with the PlayStation Portable, if I'm not mistaken. And the earliest memory of me playing that device was, well, a lot of classic games like Sonic, God of War, Patapon, if you know that game. The OGs should know that game. And I guess Tekken, back then when you had, who was his name? I forgot. Oh, why am I brain farting right now? It's from the Mishima Zaibatsu tournament, I think. It's Heihachi's father. Oh yes, Jinpachi. That's it, Jinpachi. And but from all of those games, oh, as well as Metal Slug, I forgot to mention. From all those games, I think that the best, well, not the best game, but the most memorable one for me personally was Monster Hunter Freedom Unite. And so that became one of the staples of my childhood growing up. But soon after the PSP era, I started getting into iPad games, so just typical mobile games like Clash of Clans, your classics. And not long after that, I had a hand-me-down laptop, which was basically my father's old work laptop that he gave me. And I started actually playing PC games, well, Windows games, from that moment on. And if I remember correctly, I was in elementary school at that time, and our school was trying to implement this online learning sort of curriculum. So we had to actually bring laptops to school, but the curriculum didn't really work, so it was abandoned halfway. I think it was one of those moments of like how AI actually have existed for quite a long time, but only now have people truly realized its true potential, something along those lines. So I remember in class seeing one of my friends playing on his laptop. He was playing Counter-Strike, I think, 1.6. So naturally, as a curious little kid, I sort of just peeked over and just watched him play and asked if I could, try a couple rounds. And so once I actually got the hang of it, or at least knew what the game was about, I tried to install it on my laptop, or at least ask him for guidance on how I can get that game on my laptop, because back then our only options were cracking games, because being a kid, you don't really have access to money. So that's that. And that became one of the most important games, or at least game franchise, growing up, even up until like high school, middle school. I'd say maybe even university to some degree. I eventually left that game, but yeah. So Counter-Strike 1.6, and then I played Minecraft not long after. Again, after seeing my friend play it, I remember the memory so vividly. It was him playing in a taiga biome, and I saw him playing in survival mode, and I didn't know the joy of playing survival mode at that time, because the moment I actually first installed the game, I was just, messing around in creative mode, trying to just destroy things, build things, experiment with different items and all that. But yeah, long story short, competitive shooters became one of the most important parts of my gaming history. And afterwards, even though I sort of had moments where I would pivot to different titles and genres just to give it a try, I never really had anything that caught my eye or caught my interest in a way that made me stick for any worthwhile amount of time. So I ended up playing Counter-Strike Global Offensive for what felt like the longest stretch of my gaming years. Well, when compared to other people, it might be minuscule, but I think I have around 4,000-ish hours in that game. And it would also then translate into newer titles like Valorant, Rainbow Six Siege, and other competitive shooters of the like. Well, not even just competitive shooters, it also trickled down into battle royales, your typical classic titles, PUBG, Fortnite, Apex Legends, and whatnot. But I'd say amongst all of those, competitive shooters have been the most present title or genre that I've had. So before switching to other games, I really had no sort of idea of how it felt or what other games actually was about. So I didn't really want to give it a try. It was similar to how I first watched Naruto when I was young, and I never really bothered to even look at other titles because I thought that, I guess I have that bias of, discovery bias, I'd like to say, of finding out something new and then looking at other counterparts as sort of a cheap knockoff, for lack of a better word. So, but it's almost the same in experience, because even though if it's about anime, I'll probably talk about it in a different video, but it's basically the experience of how I sort of stuck with one series or stuck with a type of game, and then once I figured out what other titles and series was about, I couldn't help but, get even more interested, and it felt like I was opening a Pandora's box, because I genuinely thought to myself, okay, well, where was this all my life? And then fast forward to university was probably the time frame when I had the biggest bulk of game time, due to it also being during the pandemic. That was when I discovered a lot of the games that I love today and still constantly look for. And I'd want to preface this by saying that I'm in no way a gaming expert or have, a lot of titles under my belt, but I've experienced quite a bit of variety in my gaming history, and I think that I'm at least qualified enough to talk about backlogs and the like. So this, I guess, has been part 1 of the backlog video, and I have not really touched on the backlog side of it at all, because that's most of it's during university. So I guess this video is sort of just a precursor or a history before we get into the meat of things. And so yeah, I guess we'll dive into the actual backlog experience of this, well, I don't want to say series, of this multi-part video, I guess we should say. And yeah, I hope to see you in the next video, and bye bye.